to sort of provide a little bit of a starting point. But the important thing is that if you have important issues that you would like to address beyond your own initial statements, the question period is a good time to do that. So I will sort of ask you a question, and if you think you've something more important to say, please feel free to address that too. But like in Davos, you know, this is a very tightly controlled system. It's less than 1 hour is all we have for 5 of us. And that means that we've got to be pretty disciplined about the timing. So I really don't want to be rude, but at the end of 6 minutes, I will have to sort of give you an indication that you need to wrap it up in the initial statement, and then after that, we can do some things with the question and answer period. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just to check, do you all hear? Do you all hear and see me, Hans Peter?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic.
We are now.
Thank you.
We're now all 5 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are on video and on audio. That's nice.
Dr. Khosla, we can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to welcome you all to this extremely timely session on water. This is a subject that is of great interest to all of us. I just want to tell you that Professor Osit Biswas and I were collaborators 45, 50 years ago on this subject, and it's still a huge subject. So we've obviously not made much of a dent on the water problems of the world, but we keep trying. And this is a great occasion to meet new people, the people that I haven't met before. George Rajkumar, who's country president for Grundfos, Mr. Hans-Peter Koch, who's commercial sector counselor for water in the Danish embassy, and Mr. Vijay Vardhan, who's an operations manager at ITC Limited. All organizations deeply committed to water solutions. Water is at the core of sustainable development. It's a critical socioeconomic resource, which is essential for healthy lives and healthy ecosystems and for human survival itself. Today, most countries are placing unprecedented pressures on water resources. In India, it is expected that the country's water demand will be roughly twice what is available, implying that we will be facing severe water shortages for hundreds of millions of people unless we change the way we manage our resource, this fundamental resource that is needed for life. With overexploitation of aquifers and the impacts of climate change, the challenge of water scarcity is likely to pose a significant risk to both business and to society and to the economy. You know, I am becoming more and more convinced that the greatest manifestation of climate change in a country, in the subcontinent, is water. Too much of it, too little of it, too complicated a seasonality of it. All of these are now going to be intensified even more with climate change. And the manifestation, as I say, of climate change may come in many different forms, extreme events, droughts and floods, but most of them have something to do with water, as we can see. In order to preserve and manage water resources, businesses have progressively recognized, particularly in India, and begun to address the issue of the water crisis, trying to minimize the impacts and ensuring not only water security, but water efficiency in all of the work that they do. Many industries have adopted initiatives for being water positive even, improving their water use in their operations, replenishing water in water stressed areas, and being able to supply to the community water that before they were taking away from it. To overcome looming water crises, collaborative action and different stakeholders are going to need to catalyze solutions for sustainable water futures. The session that we're now beginning will therefore bring together these various stakeholders from companies and from academia to talk about the collective action required to manage our water related risks and impacts to ensure water security for all. So may I first invite Mr. George Rajkumar, the country president of Grundfos, to give us his brief introductory statement. Could you unmute, George, could you unmute yourself?
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. Thank you, Dr. Ashok, for the introduction. I represent a company called Grundfos Pumps. We are the largest manufacturer of the pumps and the trendsetter in the pumping solutions. Also, we are backed up with a strong and powerful purpose statement stating that we create solutions to the world's water and climate challenges through which we improve the quality of life for the people. With this, I will start to share my perspective on water security. I will put into three different elements. One, we will talk about, I will share about why water security is important now. Then also I will share about pertinent issues on water. Then at the same time, I will share my perspective on how do we mitigate them. Okay. Having said that, water is the only substance that can't be replaced. Water is a finite, that is a fundamental to human well-being. Water can pose a serious challenge to sustainable development, but if it managed well, efficiently, and equitably, water can play a key enabling role in strengthening the resilience of social, economic, environmental systems. It is only renewable if it is well managed. At the same time, there is no dearth of water sources in India, at least. There is no real scarcity. It's a question of how well we manage that. Water security is not only a water sector issue. It is a collective one. It is a broad socio-economic, environmental, and political concern. At the same time, lack of water security will impact the multiple elements. One, the public health, economic growth, environmental sustainability, political stability. At the same time, there will be a risk reduction in disaster management. Also, I will share some statistics on water. What are the issues we are facing in India? As per the latest Niti Aayog report, that nearly 600 million Indians are facing high and extreme water stress presently. Also, the per capita water availability has declined at 1.5% depletion annually since 1990. Also, at the same time, today, presently, India is ranking 13th for overall water stress countries among the 17 overall countries in the world. There are issues it's going on. There are 5 different issues which we have to overcome. One is mismanagement of water. If you take the water, the 80% of the water is being used in the agriculture segment. The balance 20 is used in water and the domestic and industrial use. If you have to manage the gap, bridge the gap of demand and what is available, even if we save 10% of the water used in agriculture, it will provide the water to the entire India that can be managed. Same time, there is a lack of reuse of water. There is no untreatment of the water. 78% of sewage generated is being untreated and disposed directly to the rivers and the water bodies. That is how we are exploiting the water resources. Then third one is on the distribution loss and water leakages. Almost 40% of the piped water is wasted due to leak and burst. There is no, the water is not piped based on the demand. It's being piped continuously. That is why we are facing this 40% of losses through the pipe leakage and the burst. There is an excessive extraction of the groundwater. There we need to have a mitigation rule and policies to stop the extraction of the water. Then finally, on top of it, climate changes. Frequency of change in rainfalls, change in the temperature, and due to which there is a change of natural water cycle. Having said that, we need to talk about how do we mitigate all these elements. So what we'll do, I will share about these three elements which we need putting into three different buckets. It's not nothing. We can't find a quick solution which can find a solution for all. It's a journey. We need to start now so that it's a continuous journey to mitigate these issues. One is a short term, which is immediate action to reduce and reuse. That is what we need to do, starting with the individuals and the industries and the forums to reduce the usage of water and force to reuse multiple use of the water. Then the midterm is restoration of the water bodies. As per the latest ISRO survey, then most of our water bodies, lakes and ponds, everything is getting shrink. It's shrinking continuously. If you take for an example, the place where I live, it's Chennai, was having around 300 lakes over 3 decades back. Now it's only 80. So it's not being restored properly and maintained. For the long term, then we need to talk about interlinking of canals and rivers. That's a long-term story. At the same time, and if you have to find a solution for how do we manage the mismanagement of water? First, it's a mindset change with the people who are managing the water. So mindset have to be changed. So there should be, we need to legalize and that put the tags on water, then there should be value to the water. Only then people will start using it judicially. At the same time, then we need to subsidize rainwater harvesting, because today, when we talk about, we are propagating about rainwater harvesting, at the same time, when we talk about the investing, putting the investment for putting a collecting tank, collection tank and other things, then there will be immediate question on the ROI. Because since the water is getting free of cost, there is very difficult to calculate the ROI at present. Like how we are doing it for generating the green energy, then same way we need to have that subsidies for creating the rainwater harvesting. As I said, if you save minimum 10% of the water used in agri sector, that can serve for the bridge the gap between the demand and requirement, then we need to bring in the smart agriculture technologies. Because today people are using the water guzzling crops that we need to reduce. So there should be a moisture sensors put in to save the water to use what is really required. Also smart irrigation and sprinklers. Distribution losses, yes, demand-based distribution systems that has to be put in place. Water reuse and recycles, there should be already a policy in place. At the same time, we need to emphasize on the reuse of the water. Then finally on smart city, we are talking about the creation of the smart cities and urban planning. This is where the planners play a vital role. When we do the plan for the cities for the future, then we need to keep the water bodies in mind, and we need to do the water mapping accordingly. They need to build the reservoirs and other things.
Thank you.
Then finally, last point, Doctor, before I close, it's only a beginning. Are we doing enough? No. It's a business of every stakeholders and citizens to take this initiative and take it forward. Anyway, I'll add more points during the Q&A session. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, George. This is a terrific overview, and I really appreciate the fact that you covered all the sectors and all the possibilities for both water savings and water security. And I hope that I didn't interrupt you too badly, but the discipline of time I'm unfortunately having to keep. Professor Osit Biswas, I'm so delighted to see you after so many years. The last time we met, we actually produced a little book together, if you recall. And I would love to hear from you what you've been doing over these 40, 50 years in the field of water. And you have about, unfortunately, 6 or 7 minutes to do that. Could you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much, Ashok. Let me give you my views of India's water problems. I am more pessimistic on India's water problems for many reasons. First, India does not have a water problem. That is for sure. I can sit down with any one of you with the back of an envelope and show we have enough water, not only for now, but for 2100, when the population will be about 1.7 billion and industry will be increasing, urbanization will be much higher. Even then, 2100, we shouldn't have a problem. But India does have a problem. And what is that? That is the major problem India faces for decades, if not centuries, is water management has been on an unsustainable path for a very, very long time. And I don't see, looking from outside, visiting India several times a year, I do not see any signs that things are going to change in the future. Let me just suggest a few things. India's middle class is increasing. Per capita water consumption is increasing. But I have not seen a single study from anywhere in India. How much water does an Indian need to lead a productive and healthy life? We have some norms, the standard norms enshrined in the suggestions of the Ministry of Urban Affairs, that large cities should have 130 liters per capita per person, per capita per day, water available. What does this figure come from? Because we now see countries, cities with very similar climatic conditions in Europe, like in the drier parts of Spain, the water per capita water use has now come down to about 80 to 90 liters per capita per day. We have to start thinking about why these numbers were put forward and taken for sacrosanct. Now, there is no question that if the current rate continues and the current rate of pollution continues, India will have most certainly a major water crisis before 2030. Where it will happen, I have no idea. But several cities face major problem because of not having enough, not managing water properly, or the quality of water deteriorating such an extent that the health issues would be a major problem. Now, those of you who say that problem cannot be solved, India's urban water problem can be solved by one administrative fiat. 60% of Delhi's or Chennai's water problem or Bengaluru's water problem can be solved by one simple administrative fiat. And that is the current way. If you look at the current way, what we're doing is the head of the Delhi Jal Board, the chief executive of Delhi Jal Board or Chennai or Bengaluru, they are IAS officers. Their average stay is 18 months. They come with no knowledge of water utility, no knowledge of water. And when they come, they know they are not going to stay there long enough. So they cannot plan, they cannot execute the plan. And as a result, they try to hold on to the chair until the term comes and somebody else. If India just simply takes one step, that all the heads of the water authority, the Jal boards, are selected on the basis of merit. And like we do in Singapore, that initially the chief executive is given a 3-year term with a clear benchmarks of what you have to achieve within those 3 years. If the head fulfills those terms, then it is increased to another 3-year term, 6-year term, but it is only 6 years maximum. So if India headhunts its heads of the water authorities, give them at least 6 years with definite benchmarks to be met during this process, at least in my view, 60% of the problems will be solved. I have talked with the ministers and the prime ministers, and they say it cannot be done. I still do not understand why this cannot be done, but that's one possibility. Now, let me share with you what has happened and how the problems have been solved. If I ask you which country, which developing city in the world has now better water performance indicator than London, Paris, or Los Angeles? I bet you, all of you, that you won't be able to find it. It is Phnom Penh. Phnom Penh in Cambodia. It does not have the human expertise as India has, It does not have that technical expertise as India has. It does not have access to technology as India has. But Phnom Penh Water Authority now, and has been for a while, providing clean water 24/7, which it can be drunk straight from the tap. And Phnom Penh city, Phnom Penh municipality, or the city of Cambodia does not provide 1 cent of subsidy to them. It's a publicly run authority. In 1993, Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority was broke, for all practical purposes bankrupt, non-performing. And then Hun Sen had the idea to put someone who had no background in water in charge. He was there. Water management is not rocket science. Within 3 years, he put in a system where all the customers pay, the poor receive a targeted subsidy. And it is the only city I have visited in the developing world where you go to the slum, they don't know who is the Prime Minister of Cambodia, but they know the man of the Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority, who he is, because they say he's the only person who has done something for them, providing in the slums 24/7 clean water. So and everybody pays for water. Even in the slums, they pay water. They are subsidized, but they pay for water. In India, in contrast, we're not allowed to charge for water. In Delhi, up to 130 liters per person per almost free. In Kolkata, it's the same. So if people pay for water, and then make sure that the used water is collected, treated, and reused again, there is no water problem.
You're right.
And if it cannot be done, I'm afraid India has a serious problem, not only for domestic industry, for agriculture, but for environment as well. With that, I'll stop.
Thank you, Asit. I need to corroborate what you say. Absolutely. My own organization has been working on 24/7 pressurized water in the cities, and it's the cheaper, more self-financing, and more reliable, and from a public point of view, public benefit point of view, far, far better. But we simply just don't understand that you ration water by turning it off, you cause massive problems, public health problems, lack of water problems. And during the question hour period, we will come back to this. But thank you for bringing it up, because it's a fundamentally important issue for urban water supplies. Hans-Peter Cook is, as I said, the commercial sector counselor for water at the Danish Embassy. Hans-Peter, did you want to show a presentation, or would you like to take the floor and talk?
I would like to share.
Thank you.
This one. Is it running?
Yes, it's running fine.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Ashok, thank you very much for the introduction, and it is a pleasure to address the audience, distinguished guests in this event. I'll try to put a Danish perspective on the water security. Now, did it switch to page number 2?
Yes, it's why
Okay,
water
good,
security.
good. Yeah, good. Now, I won't go into the Indian water security because, or the issues, because that has been outlined very much by you, Dr. Ashok, but also by Mr. George, repeating these issues for millions of people having acute water shortages, no access, and it can, at the end of the day, it's predicted to have an influence on the GDP. So, which is serious. Now, what I would like to address is actually what has Denmark done? Because Denmark, if I take out a few points here, Denmark expect to be energy and climate neutral in the water sector by 2030, and Denmark is already well underway. Non-revenue water, years back it was at the 30% plus level. Now it is in general at 6 to 7%. And the water consumption has been reduced by 40% over the last decades. And even during that period, the GDP has been growing dramatically. My own water consumption, I just calculated, inspired by Professor Asit, my consumption is around 75 liter per day in my household. So what are the things that Denmark has been doing? Well, first of all, regulation. There has been a strong regulation on the water side. Tariffs. Water is not cheap. You pay for every drop. Metering, smart metering has been pushed in, and that has a dramatic influence on the non-revenue water. Leak detection, being able to, in a smart way, detect leaks and have them fixed, and also the strong regulation from government side, not only on the water spill and non-revenue water, but also on contamination of water, which has been an issue, is still an issue in Denmark. A lot of focus has been put on that. In relation to India, I just want to highlight the Green Strategic Partnership, which is a partnership entered between the Danish and the Indian government, which involves Danish companies. It involves the political side, of course, and it also involves the innovation side. And as a final comment, I would like to highlight, and I would like to do some commercial about the established Indian-Danish Water Technology Alliance. That is actually the purpose of that is to pull together Indian and Danish companies, Indian and Danish technologies, in order to address some of the issues that we have been talking about. So this is about having a cooperation between companies on both sides, utilities, having the experience that the Danish utilities they have been gathering over the last many years, having those in a way exported, or at least give the ability to have them available on the Indian side. So the Danish Water Technology Alliance, we are supported by great companies like Grundfos, which is here, AVK, and we are actually out for more members in that alliance. I think that will be a strong tool in order to address some of these issues. So Dr. Ashok, I think that was my remarks. I thank you very much. Every drop counts. that will be my closing remark here, and I'm open to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans-Peter. This is a very interesting presentation, and absolutely every drop counts. And I think that's the message that is coming not only from George, Rajkumar, and Asit Biswas, and you. And we look forward to hearing from Vijay Vardhan, because I'm sure he will say the same thing. So Vijay, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Khosla. So I, being the last speaker in this panel, I would also like to wrap the discussion, the points that have been put forward by others in the panel, because it's good to see that we all are on the same page when it comes to the issue of water security. I am in ITC. I look after the natural resource management operations in ITC's social investments, where water is a key element, because water is one of the most important natural resource, along with soil, biodiversity, and air quality. So it's an important natural resource on which the sustenance of humankind and also even the immediate agricultural livelihood aspect is very much dependent in Indian context. So we work a lot on water, and this is almost a 2-decade journey for us in ITC in the area of specifically to water. So the lessons we learned is what I think will be shared here. But it's again the same thing, like good to see that everyone actually has the same opinion when it comes to water security. So in simple terms, water security is about having water in required quantity and quality to meet everyone's needs. So that's how it is. And when we say everyone, so it's all stakeholders, human needs, agriculture, livestock, and of course, the most important thing is environment. Flora and fauna is an important aspect which should not be missed out. So everyone should get water in required quantity is an important thing. And the other thing is, which I want to add to the points put forward till now, is that see, how do we assess water security? Because the point is, like I'm in Kolkata of India, but at the same time, if we are in western side or southern side, so there is also a difference in the water stress or the water security situation, which is because of many aspects. It is of precipitation or it is of population. So there are many aspects which decide that. So within India also. So one thing is by nature, if we go and technically also the right way of looking at is at a basin level, river basin level, is what we have learned over a period of time, that water balance estimation is naturally, because the interdependency boundaries are confined to a river basin. So river basin level water security is what we have focused on, and I think technically that is definitely the sound way of looking at water security. So we understand in a basin what is the source and what is the dependence, and then we work for filling the gap. That is the approach we have been doing since some time. Though we did not start like that, because we also started with conventional watershed work when we started. So river basin level is the boundary we decided technically we should work in. The other thing is about what to do. So what to do again, when we look at water, so there had been lot of work in India, mainly in the area of watershed, or it's about catchment treatment, rainwater harvesting and all. But the point is, as Dr. Khosla had mentioned initially, we, over a period of time, the climate change and other issues like India's very high dependence on groundwater, these aspects have also impacted the water aspect so much that only conventional watershed won't suffice. This is another lesson we learned. So what we had done, we have brought in two more elements into the supply side work. Along with the water harvesting work, rainwater harvesting. So those two elements are, one is targeted groundwater recharge, which in technical terms is referred as managed aquifer recharge, MAR. So we have taken up this as an important aspect, because we can't otherwise fill the gap. The lost or the water that is already mined out from aquifers, to fill that gap, we need to have a targeted groundwater recharge. One lesson we learned, which we are doing. The second thing is it's a nature-based solution. So go back to the way nature works. So our focus had been on improving biomass and biodiversity in water catchment treatment work. So what happens is, with improvement of biomass or biodiversity, the greenery improvement, so the sponges, the capacity of soil to hold water improves. This again is a very simple thing, but a very important lesson for us. And we got into a large scale biodiversity conservation as part of watershed. So groundwater recharge and biodiversity are two important things we incorporated into our work, while we didn't start with those two things. And at the same time, the most important thing is, more than supply, it is about demand management. So we got into demand management work to start with from agriculture, but of course all sectors have to do their bit. But agriculture being 70 to 75% or up to 80% in some basins, it takes water, consumes water. So there is a huge potential there. Of course, this potential doesn't mean farmers sacrifices their productivity or livelihoods. So it's about improving farmer productivity by focusing on water use efficiency. we focused on India's major water consuming crops, starting with rice, wheat, sugarcane, banana, and other vegetable crops. This is how we got into. And it is very heartening to say, like last year, in 20 years, we could do 40 million cubic meter of water harvesting, rainwater harvesting. But in the demand management work we had done, that has a potential of saving 300 million cubic meter in just a year. So that's how the balance comes up, the figures come up. So the important lesson is demand management in a targeted way, because demand management is talked about, but it doesn't have a structured planning in many of the water related programs, is what we have realized. But we do have our own success, and we believe this is a strong area which will bring in a positive water balance. So river basins, supply side work, along with having the groundwater recharge and biomass improvement, and focus on demand management. These are the 3 lessons we learned and we are focusing on, and I thought of sharing with the all the people who are here, audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Vijayji, you represent a company that has a long and very distinguished record in environmental issues, particularly water management. And I really want to congratulate you on your nature-based approaches. Those are really the thing of the future, no question about it. And it's very few corporations, businesses that have understood what yours has, which is that you need to go to the root cause of our water problems, which is the massive degradation of our biomass and our biological resources, including the forests and the soils and the groundwater. And your approach is profoundly important. Really, I want to congratulate you on that. Look, we've had a very, very disciplined group of panelists, and we've got something like 20 minutes or so to have a discussion. And I think so many issues have come up that we could interact a little bit about them. My own favorite for urban water supplies has always been, for a long time, as I said, 24/7 pressurized water. And I want to pursue this a little bit more. And I tell you what one of the problems is. One of the problems is that the idea of 24/7 water has not been understood, because people always assume we do not have enough water to be able to supply unlimited quantities. But of course, 24/7 isn't a simplistic notion. As Osid said, you have to price it, you have to control it, you have to deliver it. But the point is that if you do the mathematics, if you do the system dynamics of water supplies, it turns out that you use much less water in a 24/7 context, precisely because so much less is wasted. In Delhi, for example, or Chennai or Bangalore, people have to have underground tanks. You know, the amount of investment, capital investment in private water storage, underground and overhead, is greater than the amount of capital investment in the whole municipal supply in pipes, in pumps, in treatment plants, and so on. So it's incredible that every single household has to invest money in order to have some degree of water security, and even that's not enough. The problem is not only what he said, that our politicians are blind to the idea that you can charge for water, because they are driven by the idea that water, they're not driven by it, but they're persuaded by NGOs and civil society, who are extremely important. I happen to be a very solid example of a civil society organization person, but they have managed to misunderstand this area. Water is a human right. There's no question about that. And every single person ought to have a lifeline amount of water. This is understood. We need to define how much everybody is entitled to have, and they should have it for free. But anything over that has to be charged for, and it has to be charged for sufficiently that it covers the costs, and maybe even generates a surplus, like in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. Now, the problem is that the idea of 24/7 has been sold by people like the World Bank, who are suspect of having ulterior motives, of privatizing the water supplies, of doing things that are not acceptable to societies like ours. And it's probably on the basis of wrong reasoning that most people, many people, oppose 24/7 because they say, look, there isn't enough water and it'll be wasted, and therefore there will be a transition. There will be a transition, and we've seen that. We've seen that in 4 or 5 cities. We've seen it in Navasheva, we've seen it in Hubli, Dharwar, we've seen it in Nagpur. We've seen the introduction of 24/7 on a limited basis, and how dramatic the changes in people's lives is, how dramatic the change in the economy is. So I would like to hear from some of you, any of you who have views on this, on how would we persuade the authorities as well as the civil society, both of whom oppose the idea, to look at this as a way of not only saving water, but making it universally available in quantities and quality that they deserve. And maybe we will start just a little bit more detail from Osit, and then I'd open the floor for the others. Osit, it's not only Phnom Penh, there are many other cities that are doing this too now. You're mute.
Many other cities are doing that, is correct, except Phnom Penh has been doing it from about, its success has been there from just before 2000. So it has now got a solid record of 20 years without a single cent from either the municipal government or the central government. They don't get anything at all. The consumers pay for it, and they have a system. And unfortunately now, and the good thing in Phnom Penh, in the last, from 1993 to now, it's almost 30 years, in contrast to city like Bangalore, which has an average stay of the chief executive of 9 months. This is my calculation, 9 months. Phnom Penh in 30 years had two very distinguished director general, and the second one is still serving. So that is one good thing. You cannot have an IAS officer like in Bangalore every 9 months coming on an average, but as the chief executive of the water board. No. Unless that is changed, I'm sorry to say, Ashok, that next 100 years, India will be saying the same problem. We're having a water stress, water problems. It is
You're
not
absolutely right. But could you also tell us a little bit if you've done some work on the economics of continuous water supply? Because it seems to me that that is a really telling story. If we can convince the authorities that they actually save money and save water, in the end, that's really going to be the clinching argument.
Yes, I'll go one stage further, Ashok. We have to show the Indian politicians that they would be elected because elected and re-elected because they could provide cheap 24/7 water, which could be drunk straight from the tap. We talked about the overhead and the underground and overhead tank. But what we did not talk about, every household in India I know has its own water treatments facility.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
If I can show you the back of an envelope that if the water supply we made 24/7 and we can provide clear water and clean water, that we can reduce in Copenhagen, for example, or Dennis friend will say the average per capita water use now 102 liters per capita per person. Why does someone in Delhi or Kolkata or other needs 130 liters per capita per person? Those are some fundamental issues. And on top of that, not only the quantity, but as I said, in Zaragoza, Barcelona now, we are coming to about 80 liters per capita per person, and it has absolutely no impact on health. Absolutely no. Singapore did a study between 1965 and 75. See how much water does a good how much water does an average Singaporean need so that the health and productivity is maintained. And they came to the conclusion that 75, as long as a person has 75 liters of clean water per capita per day, rest is aesthetic. It does not have any improvement on health as long as it is at least 75 liters per capita per day. So
Yeah.
if you look at the rest of the world, actually, some of the cities I mentioned, Zaragoza, Barcelona, some cities in Belgium now are coming between 75 to 80 liters per capita per day, and their health is perfectly fine. So we have to start looking how much water does a human being, does an average Indian need? Why do we need 130 liters in Delhi when we can show that with 75 to 80 liters, even if you have 2 baths a day, 2 showers a day, you can have, you can do by 80 liters per capita per person. So those are some of the things. For example, in Singapore, we have started a major large-scale experiment because showering takes a lot of time. So we are now doing a major study, because pilot studies have been very good, to put a simple flow through meter, which after 5 minutes become red.
Yeah.
So if you're taking a shower, 5 minutes, the meter will be red, and most of the people, once the meter becomes red, they stop showering. No, nothing else. Just simple.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So,
yeah, there are technological solutions. There's all these. But Hans-Peter, is your Indo-Danish program looking at some of these issues? And is it possible for us to use your kind of strength of positioning to get municipalities to think about these things? And then maybe George can also add to that. First of all, Hans-Peter, could you tell us?
Yes, absolutely. My comment here is that one trick is actually to focus on the non-revenue water. I think I addressed that as well. If you can reduce the non-revenue water by, I don't know, 5% or 10%, it's not only reduction in the water consumption. It requires energy to produce water, and you require energy and resources to get rid of the wastewater. So if you can reduce the non-revenue water by I just say 5-10%. I think that could be an interesting calculation. Now, I did not do that calculation, but I see one area, big area.
Thank
and then
you.
also the
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that was more or less it. And then to Mr. Ashit's point, that put up a small red light when you have showered for 3 minutes. That is a simple and practical measure. And some utilities in Denmark, they actually did it. And yeah, it works.
It works. Good.
Doctor, quick note from my side is yes, it's a dream come true when most of the cities have a 24/7 water. There are 2 options which we are working on through Indo-Danish Strategic Alliance and the Water Alliance. One on Hans-Peter has already addressed on reduction of the non-renewable water. By when we have a 24/7, then all the pipelines are pressurized. So based on the demand, we need to have the proper system to pressurize, so that through which we can reduce the non-revenue water. The second one is when we have 24/7 water, then there will be plenty of amount of gray water and wastewater is being generated. The kind of infrastructure cost, what usually it would have been spent on storage, as you said, Doctor, on both overhead tank and under sump, that can be put on reusing treatment of the wastewater and the gray water, so that can be reused within the society, so that within that environment, then we can have that self-served water life cycle. This.
Yeah, and Vijay, your theory about using nature, this is a very strong case for having wetlands and water bodies in cities. This is a very strong case for really looking at urban water as something that needs the same kind of nurturing, that you do in the countryside, don't you think?
Yeah, see, I won't say we have great expertise in urban, but we do have two of the, again, means areas where we have initiated work. So one is like in Bhopal, if you see, so we have been working at the catchment side, restoring the Bhopal lake. But what we have realized when we work on this side of restoring and reviving the lake, the people, the consumers also should actually take the responsibility of using the water judiciously. So on this, we have initiated discussing with the civic bodies and the organizations in the urban side, like how will they actually take up the responsibility when so much is being done on the supply side? How will they actually work for, like how George had mentioned initially, those fittings, minimizing the wastages in the whole supply of the urban side, and also I don't know, like we are new to that, but we asked them like, how will you save water? So this had been an initiative we got into recently, and our work on this supply and demand management in agriculture, we have replicated in Bangalore. We have initiated. What we have done, we have created an awareness template, which is a capacity building type template, which we take to all these residential complexes, and we created a scorecard. So the scorecard is whether they have a rainwater harvesting facility, then whether they have the means how much efficient is it? Is it 50%, 25, or 100? And then whether they have the tap system to actually recycle the water and use it back for the flush system. Like that, we have 3 to 4 parameters on which scorecard has been created, and we are creating that awareness in the complexes and making people get excited and then take up the plan so that they reach to the best score. So these are two initiatives we thought in a structured way, in a programmatic way, rather, I will say, which we want to test out. Then we will take it to the policy level also, so that people will also see how can it be replicated at large scale.
Yes, that's great. Look, I think industry is going to have to play a really important role in this. So what I'd like to ask all four of you, what do you think is the state of play at the moment in data, in the information base on how much water is being used, how much is being wasted, how much could be conserved, what are the footprints of various industries, different sectors, different sizes, are big industries capable of better performance on water footprints than small industries in the same sector, etc. I think this is a very major area. How do we find out what the state of play is? How do we find out how much people could actually, in industry, in various industrial sectors, be able to save? Which are the industries, like, for example, cotton or various sugar-based industries and so on, that depend on a value chain all the way from the crop to the consumer, with huge quantities of water, and what can we do about them? Do you have any ideas? Because you work in industries or you work with industries, and I think the participants in this meeting would love to know what are the possibilities, not just technological, not just economic and financial and fiscal, not just the policy issues, but basically what are the attitudinal changes that we need among managers who could actually do it without too much of an investment, make significant changes. So let me open the floor again. Who would like to start on that?
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please, George.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very pertinent question, Dr. Shukla. And the major issue is on the policy side. We need to legalize the water usage. Means today the data is not available, because we have also worked in the local authorities here for collecting through our Tamil Nadu sustainability panel. So it's very difficult to collect the data. So yes, there are companies, organizations who are volunteering and working in this space on the sustainable elements. They are volunteering, providing the data, but the rest of them are not. So we need to legalize, like how we are having the tax filing as compulsion. So they need to do that, the water filing. So they need to record and file how much of water in the entire value chain is being used. Having said that, so we need to bring the policy in place so that, but at the same time, from industry point of it, they need to work on the water efficiency. So it's a continuous efforts have to go on to improve their processes, improve how water can be reused and utilized in the processes without any contamination within that area. So that they can reduce their footprint. The second most important element is groundwater recharge or the collection of the harvesting. Because when the water is available free of cost, when the Mother Earth is giving, and also whenever there is a rain, excess rain, then we need to collect, and so that we can make use of it. You can see the contrast. The last 2 days it's heavily raining in Delhi. At the same time, other parts are really starving for the water. How do we make use of it? How do we make use of the water and store it properly and use it in the industries so that their water efficiency will improve? One, we need on the policy side, we need to collect the data so that we can have the transparency on where it is being used. The demand side can be managed much better by the government.
Thank you. Asif, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add something more. That is, it needs industry themselves to be aware of the importance of water. Let me give you just one example of an industry in India, which has become one of the group. It's the Nestle India. They have a factory in Moga. Moga processes a lot of milk. Before, the milk used to be evaporated, and 87% of milk is water. So when you develop evaporated milk, 87% of water goes away. So what Nestle did is they started a new way of computing. They said all the Nestle factories in the world where the water is not charged properly, they can use a shadow price of what Nestle's major factory in Beve headquarters in Beve pays for water. So you can use that shadow price. So when you use that shadow price, they found out it is cheaper to catch the evaporation, as a result of which at least 6 of the plants of Nestle's have now become water positive. Instead of taking water from the environment, using it, they're using the processing of the milk and catch that water, treat it, and the whole factory uses that and still have some left over. For example, that factory in Mexico, actually during the last drought, sold the excess water to the other factories. They didn't take any from the nature, but from the raw material they do it. So we have to look in industry by industry. Different type of industry has different requirements. So Nestle slowly now, all their milk factories all over the world, because Nestle is a major manufacturer of condensed and evaporated milk, they want it to be what they call zero water factory. In fact, it's becoming a positive water factory because that water is being used. So we have to start looking at a slightly different way in the different industry to see how we can reduce it. We don't have a one particular solution for all industry. So what I'm saying is, if Moga can do it, why cannot the other milk factories in India, which makes powdered milk, condensed milk, can do the same thing?
Exactly. I think that's a very good point. And of course, Vijay's company has taken that view. They would do exactly what you're saying. State-of-the-art, world-class benchmarks. In fact, they're setting the benchmarks themselves. Vijay, would you like to just say a few words? We've got enough time for you and Hans-Peter, just a couple of minutes each.
So we do have very clear-cut definition to actually how do we create the positive footprint or positive water footprint. So phase 1, what we had embarked upon was making ITC water positive. So all ITC operation, the water consumed, to that equivalent, we have worked for creating water storage across country. So at India level, if we look at, ITC is a water positive company, which is more than a decade we are continuing the same status. Then the next level thing we have embarked upon is each of the unit or the factory which we have, that particular unit has to become water positive in terms of all stakeholders to have water. Means water for all today and tomorrow. That is the objective we are working towards in each of the factory location. So you define the boundary from where we get water and the codependence on the same water source, and work for water security for all the codependents. Means it's, as I mentioned earlier, so it's domestic needs, other industries, livestock, environment, all that. So you do a water balance for all the codependents and work for water security. The third thing we got into now is creating positive crop water footprint. So equal to the buy ITC makes. Suppose like wheat is a major commodity of ITC. So what does ITC's wheat buy entail when we come to water footprint? So first estimate that and work for saving so much water either in wheat or in other crops in the same catchment where we are procuring, so that our crop sourcing also becomes positive water footprint. So that is how we are working towards. It's a very structured phase-wise manner, so that tomorrow ITC's footprint in all operations at all level will be 0 or positive. That is it, Dr. Khosla.
You're muted, Dr. Ashok.
You are muted, Doctor.
Please unmute Dr. Ashok.
I'm sorry, Hans Peter. I was just saying that we have just 1 or 2 minutes left, and I'd like Hans Peter to make a short statement, and then we will wrap up.
Thank you very much. I will use these 2 minutes effectively. I will take a little bit different approach. From Denmark, if a Danish company contaminates water by accident or in some other way, most Danish companies, the first thing they will do is actually to report it to the authorities. They don't try to hide it under the carpet. Why is that? Are they more honest than Indian companies? No. But the consequences, if they don't do it, and if they are caught, the consequences are heavy penalties, heavy regulation. So there's a consensus among Danish companies that if I do a contamination by mistake, by accident or whatever, then I better as the first report it as an emergency. That was my.
Thank you. Well, that's profoundly important. I fear we've run out of time. I think we had a terrific discussion, and I really appreciate the 4 of you having put in so many relevant and immediately compact ideas. I think the participants in this meeting will go away with a really large number of things to think about. And the next time they have a shower, they're going to have to think, even without the red light, that they've got to stop at some point. Thank you very much, and we will meet again soon.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jayashree. I'm handing it over to you. Thank you.